Here we go!
Welcome to Close Combat. I'm Sergeant First Class Dan Wiltshire. Coming up, we'll have all the cruiserweight action in the Army Championship Combatives Tournament. But first, a look at why the program exists. Since the mid-90s, the Army has revitalized and revolutionized its combatives training program. Modern warfare has changed, and so has the need for hand-to-hand combat. The techniques you're about to see help defuse hostile situations and save lives downrange. Here's a look at modern Army combatives.
The Modern Army Combatives program is as much about developing warrior ethos and confidence and agile adaptive leaders as it is about developing fighting skills.
The basic and tactical course, what used to be the level 1 and 2, are taught out around the force in the units by their indigenous instructors. And what we do here at the combative school is we train those instructors.
And then the last week, we kind of incorporate everything into scenario-based training. So they'll use all the tools that they've acquired through the course, how to fight with a rifle, how to fight with a pistol, how to fight with a knife.
They get in a predicament in training, and they see that they can get out of it so that they could, again, control a situation.
All right, sir, get your hands up. Hands up.
And from that, I said, wow, I'm not afraid now.
Get out of the vehicle, sir. Get out of the vehicle.
It makes a big difference when you go in there and you can physically grab someone and handle them and bend them to your will.
Your other hand, sir.
Without hurting them. So like I said, I mean, people see that. And they see that, you know, you're forcing your will upon them, but that you're not abusing them.
Our soldiers go out and have life and death fights routinely. It's got to be real, because if it's not, we're going to hear about it immediately. Somebody's going to get killed.
Fort Benning, Georgia is home to the Modern Army Combative Schoolhouse. It's also home to the Army Ranger School. Candidates train in combatives as part of their physical and mental assessment. Take a look.
Well, hey, where you going to? I'm not done with you. Tell me what you wanna do. Never been afraid of you. Just because you walk around.
The first 3 days is our Ranger assessment phase. And what that is we basically test them physically to see if they'll have the physical ability to complete the entire Ranger course. But it's really all about their leadership and their mental ability. The third night, we road march out from here out to Camp Darby. It's about 15.5-mile road march for them. And then once we get there, we basically weeded out all the week, and now we start right into the training. So then they'll start going through the patrolling. That's when they'll really get into the sleep deprivation, the food deprivation, so we can put that little bit of stress on to simulate combat stress, and then we'll see how they perform.
You better watch with the stare. I see you coming undone. Come on and get some.
Well, they'll be entering and clearing rooms in Florida phase, and they're going to run into an opponent, and they're going to have to take them down using combatives techniques. And we'll bring them in here, we'll test their leadership skills, we'll give them some new techniques to learn, and really the biggest thing for Ranger School is you learn about yourself. And that's what each one of these soldiers is going to do. They're going to learn how they react when they're lacking sleep, when they're lacking food, and when they're under those stressful conditions. They learn that they can actually make decisions, make the right decisions, and lead other soldiers. We're starting to hit the mental hump right now. Like I said, they've been up since about 2 this morning. They won't get to bed tonight until about midnight. And then they'll be back up about 2 again. So they're going to start working on about 2 to 4 hours of sleep for the next 60 days.
Just because you walk around, everyone you're talking down, don't you even make a sound. I will drop you to the ground.
Just knowing that you're taught to defend yourself is always a good thing to have, because you never know what situation you may find yourself in regular day life.
Especially if you're working law enforcement, you know, you never know when you can come into, I guess, physical contact with somebody, and it's always a good skill to have. So, because you just never know what could happen at any time.
Combatives, I'd say, is a good program to have at all times, because you never know when you might need something. I guess, as others have said, it's a good tool for the toolbox. You never know what circumstances you might cross, and you might need to be able to go hand to hand.
With the job that I have and a lot of my friends have, we're just trying to come home. So
you know, we're just eliminating the enemy and trying to come home at the same time and bring each other home. So anything we got to make that happen and to accomplish the goal overseas, that's what we got to do.
Up next, a closer look at female fighters and their secret to defeating their male opponents in the ring.
Plus, we're ringside for the Cruiserweight Finals at the Army Combatives Championship. I'm Van Stokes, here with Matt Larson, Director of the Army Combatives Program. Matt, you were ringside at the annual Army Combatives Championship in Fort Benning, Georgia. Fighters came from as far away as Guam, Hawaii, and Alaska. What's their motivation for being here?
Well, Van, we've even had fighters coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan just to be in this tournament. The bottom line is they know they want to be the best soldier there is in the Army, and this is one way for them to show it.
So their motivation to be the best brought them to Fort Benning, Georgia. Well, let's meet the fighters in the first cruiserweight match. Daniel Cook and Tony Martin faced off for the bronze medal in the consolation fight. Here's what they had to say going into the match.
Get in, throw some strikes, take them down, and ground and pound.
I've trained on post with the combatives team, with First Sergeant and Sergeant Pledger, and then I've also trained at various gyms off post just to get ready and get as much time in as I can.
I've wrestled since I was in 4th grade, and I'm 24 now, so I've been wrestling for a long time, and that's pretty much my whole background. It's everything I've been doing. So.
Actually, from jiu-jitsu to combatives is a lot of the same. Obviously, there is not as much contact in combatives because we have other jobs and other things to do. This is not what we do for a living. This is something to keep us ready and focused. So it's not as much, striking and stuff, but it's very similar.
So you've got ready, focused, and then the term ground and pound. What does that mean?
A lot of the people who have a wrestling background, they really know how to dominate positionally, but don't necessarily know how to capitalize as far as submission holds, chokes, or whatnot. So their plan generally will be to get the person down and then just hit them a lot. That's a colloquial term for ground and pound.
As opposed to standing up, perhaps, and going into your typical boxing movements. Get them on the ground and do your work.
Exactly right.
Well, let's go to the action and see how the results turn out. Daniel Cook in the red belt and Tony Martin in the blue belt. Martin from Fort Lee, Virginia, and Cook, Fort Richardson, Alaska.
Fort Lee, Virginia is very interesting. That's the Army's Quartermaster Corps headquarters. And one of the things about combatives is that it takes off in the places you might not expect. In fact, several years ago, I went to Fort Lee, and I was inspecting the training, and I went and saw what they were doing there. And some of those things were so good, so much better than were happening anywhere else, that we made them the Army standard. So it's really, combatives is spread throughout every portion of the Army, even the portions you wouldn't imagine.
Well, you talk about one Army, one team, and one fight. So whether you're a logistician at Fort Lee or whether you're an infantry soldier, say at Fort Benning or in Fort Richardson, the name of the game always comes back to combat.
That's right. A soldier is a soldier. And, imagine all the fights in the past, Battle of the Bulge and early parts of the Iraq War. Every soldier is liable to be the one who needs these skills. Finds themselves entering a building or their convoy ambushed.
Tony Martin pushing Daniel Cook in against the blue corner ring post. The pad in the corner of the ring.
Smart, he's bringing him over to where his coach is so he can get some guidance right there. And you can see it's a wrestling battle at this point. Martin with 2 underhooks where his arm is in the armpit there and trying to get a good takedown position.
But nice counter as he goes to the upper head, but then again Tony Martin brings the arms back down, so Daniel Cook unable to gain a competitive advantage as both combatants remain on their feet. You see the referee trying to pull that blue belt away from Tony Martin. Does not want that to impede the action.
Well, Cook has got a handle on it, and He thought he had something.
So objectively, this one comes out a little difficult. We're working a 10-point must system, and there you see a couple of striking glancing blows, I should say. But on the 10-point must system, 3 judges, each at different sides of the ring. Each judge will give the winner of each round 10 points, and then the loser 9, 8, 7, whatever, accordingly.
That's correct.
And right now, you'd have to say there's no dominant advantage.
Yeah, nobody's winning at this point. Not much has happened. You can tell that Cook wants it to be a striking fight. He's trying to get some space, but Martin keeps sucking him in tight, looking for that takedown.
Well, I just go back to his comments that he talked about prior to the start of this round. Ground and pound.
Well, the operative word there is ground, so he's having a hard time with that one as we speak.
Well, that he is. Tony Martin would.
You can see, too, that's a good shot of how their posture is. When your hips are back like that, it's the time for knee strikes. And as they figure it out, they'll start landing them up in there.
But can you get a Can you get a pull down, Matt, if you got an overextension such as Daniel Cook might be at this point? Can you get a yank and then a pull down, perhaps, and then a quick turnaround?
It is, but their weight and their balance is only relative to each other. So you can pull him down, but if you're all bent over too, it's difficult.
There's a quick strike. And the lift by Tony Martin. But again, back to a very neutral standing position. How important is strength versus, say, technique?
Well, strength and size are factors in any fight. They're attributes, just as skill is an attribute, and they can work to your advantage. But there's a lot of people who say, strength and strength doesn't really matter, but they're basically wrong. It does.
As does quickness and a few other attributes, conditioning and so forth. Well, right now you've got Tony Martin in the top position over Daniel Cook, and you see a little blood on the face of Daniel Cook. It's hard to say where that's coming from.
Martin was having a hard time freeing that arm, his right arm, but now he's got it free, and you can see how he's using his shoulder there to pressure Cook's chin to keep his head pushed away. That's one way to control his hips and the rest of them. If you can control their head, you can control their whole body.
Now talk about their uniforms, their competitive uniforms real quick.
Well, they're both wearing the Army's ACU bottoms, which is the Army combat uniform, because at the end of the day, soldiers fight wearing their uniforms, and that's what they really need to do. Looks like he's mounted here.
Mounted is some striking blows to the head as this period comes to an end, and as they went down into the final seconds of the first period, Matt, it almost looked like those final blows might have turned the tide in the favor of Tony Martin as they go into the break.
I would imagine if I was judging, I would have given that round to Martin, but it was very close, so a 10-9 round at the most. Cook was very competitive in the clinch, landed just as many blows when they were on their feet, but it did seem like Martin was the aggressor.
And right now, you get a look at Daniel Cook. What do you think his coaches have to say?
I would imagine his coaches are telling him to get some range. Well, let's see if we can hear a little bit.
Fight your fight. Get back in the clinch. All right? Hey, feel good? Good. Keep doing it.
That's Monty Massey in the corner there of Tony Martin. He's the coach of the Fort Lee team. Started out as a paratrooper in the 173rd Airborne Brigade over in Vicenza, Italy.
And now Tony Martin, assigned Quartermaster Group, 111th Quartermaster Group at Fort Lee, Virginia. But he brings his skills that perhaps he developed maybe in Vicenza, now into Fort Lee, and now into this competition. Round number 2 underway.
You could see Cook trying a little harder to use that jab, wanting to keep some space. Martin tying him up, looking for good hand position, trying to get a good place where he can take him down.
But Cook, as you've already indicated, does a good job of keeping his hips back.
That's right. Now Martin's got a hold of his head as if to attempt for a guillotine choke, but I'm not sure he's thinking about that. I think he's thinking more about his wrestling background, where his arms should be, how he can get this takedown.
Once again, this is a bronze medal match, the Cruiserweight division, and the weight classes real quickly. cruiserweight covers what range?
Cruiserweight is up to 185.
Nice belly to back move, and then the throw down to the canvas by Tony Martin.
And he's mounted now.
And he's mounted in a good position.
The advantage of the mounted position like that is that you can not only use your hips to affect their arms, but if he rises up, he'll be able to rain punches down, and Cook will not be able to answer them effectively.
Cruiserweight class again, 180?
185 and below.
And below. Now, can you compete up a weight class, or you can't compete down, of course?
That's correct. They can essentially fight at any weight class they can make. So if you weighed 155, oh, they're out into the crowd.
Into the crowd, almost off to the side of the ring, and you see our safety folks over to the side to keep them from rolling out of the ring. And that blue belt has always been a problem throughout for Tony Martin.
These guys, we use the belts to mark who's who, but it's not really a martial art in the traditional sense, and so belts and bowing and all that stuff doesn't really come into play.
Total number of weight classes in Army combatives?
There are 8 total weight classes, and only one bracket, not a male and female bracket, just one bracket. The females get now a 9% body weight advantage in each weight class. So, for example, in the 110 weight class, which is the smallest, the males would have to weigh 110, and the females could weigh almost 120.
And all the training, it's built into the training cycle of the respective military units.
Well, that's right. The combatives is from day 3 of basic training, they begin to learn it, and as they go forward in their career, each of the stages, they learn what's appropriate for that rank. For example, when a captain is at the school he's going to go to prior to taking over a company, which is about a 150-man unit, he learns different things than somebody who's about to be taking over a fire team, which is only 5 people. So he would learn how to run a program, how to host competitions.
And I would call you almost the father of Army combatives, but in terms of structuring the competitions and helping design the training regimen, it's so that it can be exportable to all the installations around the Army.
That's right. You know, the Army program was a grassroots program. It really started from one battalion, which was the 2nd Ranger Battalion up at Fort Lewis, and it grew from there, and now it's the whole Army.
Tony Martin, very aggressive right now on the body attacks, takes Daniel Cook to the mat. Under 1 minute remaining here in round number 2. Cook fighting from the bottom position.
It's like they're going to move him out to the center.
Bring him back to the center. They've fought with the edge of the ring throughout this period, have they not?
That's right. That's one of the disadvantages of fighting in a ring. The edge it's not really designed for this, and so you see that they have problems when they get in the ropes. Now, you know, when you're fighting down range, you're in a room most of the time. The hand-to-hand happens a lot in the current wars because of the fact that we're fighting in urban areas. And when you go into a room that's maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, it's not a marksmanship contest in there. It's a fight.
Right now, Daniel Cook has a fight on his hands as he remains in the bottom position. And Tony Martin on the top, under 10 seconds. You hear the pounding of the canvas.
Cook pretty flat on his back. He's got to get off of his back if he's going to be anything effective from down there.
And there's the bell to end round number 2. So Tony Martin will go back to his corner as Daniel Cook will go back to the red corner. Let's give a listen to Tony Martin, see what we can pick up.
Come on. Keep those hands up. Keep those hands up. Right? Keep your hands up. Keep the cranks going again. All right. You do what you get. Remember, we're not going to win this fight in 1 second. Right? Don't stall it out. Make sure you press the fight. You get side control again. Throw a couple knees, throw a couple punches, but just don't sit on top of it. Stay semi. You don't have to be 1,000 miles an hour. Drive too, okay? Just
press the fight. Keep your hands up. Don't sit on top of him. I mean, they've got to feel right now that he's in a very good position.
And I think Daniel Cook's corner is telling him he needs to stay off the bottom. Make it a punching match. Stay on your feet.
And you think conditioning doesn't come into play. You just see the beads of sweat going off of Daniel Cook's forehead. Here we go, round number 3.
And clearly what you're seeing here is that Tony Martin has the ability to be able to control where the fight's going to be. But since he's primarily a background in wrestling, he doesn't necessarily know what to do once he gets him there. So that's why you're seeing this fight kind of end up with him on top a lot. And you can see Cook now really trying hard to make sure he's the one on top.
Daniel Cook from Fort Richardson, Alaska, and Tony Martin from Fort Lee, Virginia. And we're here at Fort Benning, Georgia. So they're called back out to the center of the ring. We want to say hello to all the folks that are watching this on AFN in Europe as well as in the Pacific, and of course to all of our viewers on the Pentagon Channel. Glad we could be bringing you this event from Fort Benning. And you can sit on your opponent, not just on the mat, but and a grip and hang a little bit like Tony Martin's doing right now. Front body lock, double arm lock.
Well, if Martin knew to do it, he could be eating him up with knee strikes to the body there. It's just that that's not something they do very much in wrestling, and therefore it's not coming to his mind.
Well, you
good
look
exchange there.
Yeah, good exchange. You look at Martin, he keeps his gloves up and protects his head. He's got his gloves on each side of his head.
There's some knee strikes.
Right there, just like that. You see that look as he goes up. That's, of course, that is to protect the head against strikes, to ward off or deflect any blows. Now he comes at him. Bit of a flurry. Whoa, there comes Daniel Cook. But credit Tony Martin, he knew how to neutralize that.
Look at this. Got him in the air. Oh.
And you heard the crowd. The crowd just basically wanted to see him being taken down to the mat in a forceful way. I don't want to say illegal. I don't want to say spiking, but they felt when he had him off the ground that Tony Martin could have dumped him.
It looked like he could have. You know, the rule is that they can't spike him on their head, obviously, to be protective of injuries, but they can sure put him down hard.
You can drop him on his back so fast and so hard that takes the wind out of him.
That's right. There's no rule about having to put him down soft.
Which is exactly what Tony Martin just did, put him down soft. Crowd sensing this one could be a little more than what they might be watching, because they see the potential in each one of these guys.
You can see after 3 rounds and 3 days of fighting, the fatigue levels there.
Daniel Cook comes at him a little bit strong now. A nice flurry here deep into this round. And you almost saw a backhanded elbow earlier by Tony Martin as he came back around like that.
I think it was inadvertent. Elbow strikes are against the rules, but and the reason they are is because elbows, what they really do is open up cuts, and there's no sense in having that's just extra injuries. Remember, you know, these soldiers sometimes even come back from the war zone to fight in this tournament, so it's we have to be kind of protective of them.
And a number of these combatants have had multiple deployments.
That's right. I don't know how many these two have had, but pretty much everybody in the finals today has been to the war zone more than once.
A lot of hugging, a lot of hanging on right now, and again, conditioning and gas become factors. Overhead, boy, that's a roundhouse by Daniel Cook. Have you seen Cook come on enough in this round, perhaps?
Well, he might be winning this round, but Martin is still the aggressor. He's still mostly dominating every time they get tied up. And he also has the ability to tie up whenever he wants to shut down those punches. I think if I was one of the judges, I'd be looking for Cook to do a little more.
Third and final round of this 3-round contest, under 1 minute, 50 seconds remaining.
Here's the knees. You can see from that posture, his body's wide open at knee strikes.
And you talked earlier about Tony Martin's ability to deliver the knee blows. There you saw him become a little more aggressive.
That's right, and the interplay between strikes, knee blows, takedowns, each of those things plays in order to, you know, maybe if he was landing some more knees, he'd be having an easier time with that takedown.
Right now, leaning on is Tony Martin. They go under 20 seconds over against the ropes. You've got to think that both of these combatants probably feel in their mind like this could go either way.
And here we go, 10 seconds left. Good shot.
Daniel Cook comes on strong. But Tony Martin moves in to neutralize it as time expires. And the bell sounds to end round number 3.
Yeah, Cook had a flurry there at the end, but I think too little too late. Pretty much Martin dominating most of the fight.
So let's see how this one comes out on the cards.
The winner by unanimous decision in the red belt from U.S. Army Alaska, Daniel
Unanimous
Cook.
decision. Wow. That is a little difficult. As we took a look at that.
Correction.
Whoa.
Correction in the blue belt. From Fort Lee, Tony Martin.
All right, unanimous decision. Now we got it. Unanimous decision. Tony Martin of Fort Lee, Virginia gets the nod, getting the decision of all 3 judges.
Yeah,
Matt.
I was a little surprised when they raised Cook's hand. I was thinking maybe he did land more strikes, but I'm glad it came out Martin. I thought he took all 3 rounds.
Yeah, well, we talked about that as they were going through it. You thought possibly Cook might have come on and taken round number 3, but it would have been 2 rounds to 1, basically, instead for Martin.
And I think even then, I think Martin took the last round as well. Cook, I think, too little too late in that round. And it looked like when they were standing in the corners that they both still had plenty left to go. Maybe he should have brought more of it to the table.
And mentally, I really believe that Tony Martin also competed very well mentally, not just physically.
I agree. He paced himself. He dominated most of the fight, controlled the position throughout.
Let's hear from our winner.
All right, good match. So what went through your mind when you won?
I don't know. I was just surprised. I listened to my coach, tried to tie him up and work my game.
You got any shout-outs for anybody out there?
I want to throw a shout-out to Fort Lee, Virginia, my wife, my family, and throw a shout-out to my coach. Yeah.
All right, congratulations. Back to you.
So the bronze medal match in this cruiserweight division goes to Tony Martin, and he's probably glad he's going to get that eye a chance to heal now.
Yeah, you could tell there in the after thing that he had taken a few shots in that fight.
Well, that he has. Coming up later in the show, we'll be back with all of the action from the gold medal fight in the cruiserweight division. Stick around. There's more to come on Close Combat.
Welcome back to Close Combat. There is no gender discrimination in battle or when it comes to combative training. Females are paired with males, and as you're about to see, they're more than able to hold their own.
It started when I went to level 1, and it caught my attention. It's just not a lot of females do combatives, and then just getting used to throwing around guys, and it's more like showing the guys that females can do combatives also.
I started doing anti-attack, anti-rape courses, and then I started teaching, and from there it just kept going on until I finally said I want to compete at the age of 17. Got my parents to sign my contract and competed.
One of my old NCOs, he was like, you should go, train. And then I wanted to do level 1 and level 2. And then I did the tournament at Fort Hood. And then they opened up the new weight class, which is like 110 bantamweight. And the coaches were like, hey, I think you would do really, I think you'll do well. And why don't you just try it? And I was like, what the heck? Intimidating, not so much. It was just more of a, that in their mind, they're soldiers. We're all soldiers, so our mentality is win, win, win all the time. And then for him, it's not just win. Now it's win and don't lose to a girl.
They can't really hold you down, and it's really easy to squirm out of their locks and stuff, and they're so big, and it's hard to keep you down sometimes, but unless they get all their weight on you, yeah, it's pretty hard. For me, it's to prove a lot of guys that a lot of females can do it too.
And it is all about the technique. It isn't, they show you different ways to get around. Of course, if smaller, and like the instructors are always giving advice.
If you haven't done it, I guess it could be, but for me it's not, because I've trained with males, I've, rolled with them constantly, and it's just, it's another one of the things that you're going to deal with in a tournament that's co-ed.
It actually raised my confidence a lot, because I was intimidated by a lot of the guys, especially this class, I'm the only female. And I was like, oh, this is gonna be a tough month for me. Because a lot of these guys can probably practically pick me up and just throw me off of them.
A huge confidence builder. I think after this course, it'll bring my confidence up quite a bit.
You're going to be going into a building, you're going down an alleyway where they can get a hold of your weapon. They can even, you know, get any kind of distance between you and them. It'd be great, but if they close that distance, you're going to need it. You need to implement anything that you learned in the Army combatives. Get around them or get them on the ground, try and disable what they're able to do to you.
When you're out, like even as a soldier, you know, soldiers like, oh, they look at you wrong or something, they try to start an issue, a problem, and you're just like, in your head, you're like, I don't need to. You just ignore it because you know, like, if it really got to that level, you knew that battle's already won, so why even bother with it?
Coming up, we're back at the Army Combatives Tournament with the Cruiserweight Gold Medal match. Plus, this year's championship trophy has special meaning to the Combative Schoolhouse. That's up next on Close Combat. Welcome back to Close Combat. The Army Combatives Championship Trophy holds special meaning to those participating in the tournament. The Pedro Lacerda Trophy is named for an instructor who left his mark on the combative school.
He was a Brazilian young man who joined the United States Army, joined the United States Army because of 9/11. He wanted to be a soldier, and he became a soldier. He volunteered to be a paratrooper, and he became a paratrooper. He volunteered to be an Army Ranger, and he became an Army Ranger. He was a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He was a quiet, humble, professional, a great husband and a great dad, and a world-class fighter. He was a trainer of combatives in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and he died unexpectedly of a brain aneurysm. And so because of the quiet professional that he was, the warrior flame that burned in his heart, we have named the championship trophy for him. And so many people knew him and loved him and respected him. And so I think it's a good thing.
While he was at Fort Benning, Pedro Lacerda took advantage of some of the dozens of courses offered to soldiers through the Maneuver Center of Excellence. Here's a live-fire demonstration of a few of them, including Airborne, Infantry, Strike Brigade, and the Combative School. Up next, we're back ringside for the Cruiserweight Championship fight in the Army Combatives Tournament.
I'm Van Stokes, back with Matt Larson. Now, for the final fight in the Cruiserweight division, let's meet the fighters. Jason Norwood and Jacob South fought for the gold in the championship. Here's their pre-fight strategy.
Well, when I got into fighting, I started level 2 and level 3 at Fort Knox. I was a drill sergeant down there for mobilization. And I came here in 07. I took it in 07. I got back home to Utah and just been training jiu-jitsu and MMA as much as I can. And then they weren't able to send me back in 08 to fight. So I just kept training and fought in 09 last year. I fought at 170 and I won that. And now I'm just back again, trying to keep my title at 185, so we'll see what happens.
Modern Army Combatives completes the weapon system, and that's what it is. Each soldier is a weapon system. It's not just the M4 they carry, and it's not just for artillery guys. It's not just the cannon that they may operate. It's each soldier individually is a weapon system, and we complete that. So we make it so that soldiers can
you know, handle their opponent, the enemy, whether it be 3 feet away or in artillery world with cannons 30 kilometers away. From that entire range, we can handle opponents, and combatives completes that.
So, Matt, you heard them discuss their strategy. You heard their mindsets. What can you tell me about these contestants?
Well, these are both former champions. Each one of them won more than once, and they're also pretty experienced soldiers. And so what you're seeing is that these guys really have it. They know what we're doing here. In the end, the arena is not the goal. The battlefield is the goal, and that's what they're focused on, even as they're walking into the fight.
Well, they each seem to have that common perspective on the way combatives fits in to the total Army picture. Well, let's get to the action. Jason Norwood, very quick to go to the legs of Jacob Smith. Jason Norwood with the red belt on from Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Jacob South. My correction on the name on it. Jacob South from the 95th Division at Fort Douglas, Utah. That's in Salt Lake City.
You can see these two are mixing it up. Norwood, who wrestled at West Point, and before he became a combatives fighter, and very experienced combatives fighter, having won here before. South, purely a combatives fighter, learning what he knows about fighting while in the Army.
And you look at Norwood, you mentioned the fact that he was a wrestler at West Point. And I want to talk a little bit as we continue throughout the course of this bout about his philosophy and his idea of being a personal weapons system with the Fire Center of Excellence.
You know, before the war, it was easy to imagine that we were past the point of hand-to-hand combat. Technology would take it over, but that has certainly not been the case. Back on their feet.
And he comes up, I want to say, comes up kicking, not swinging.
A little bit of a trip there.
South landing a blow or two, but then has to backpedal very quickly as Norwood puts on the charge, and again, losing your balance. But once you go down like that, you can really jump on and attack your opponent, even though he may have lost his balance on his own.
I said Norwood is the pursuer here so far in the fight. South countering, good technique, but Norwood as the aggressor, pushing it to this position here, inside the guard. Now, Norwood is also a very experienced fighter in the civilian world. I think he's got 10 or 11 professional mixed martial arts fights, as well as being a captain in the artillery.
Well, you can see very quickly, can you not, some of the experience of some of our contestants throughout this entire competition. They're very quick to show their experience. They keep their head about them under pressure and under fire.
Yeah, these fighters, they've been at it for a long time, and you heard South saying he won in 07, and you know, he's been training for a while. These guys really know what they're doing. You can see Norwood using his hips there to push that leg down and turn the angle on that guard, making some space to be able to land punches. Looks like they're getting them back to their feet.
Well, you also saw Norwood put his hands up in the air like that, signifying that, asking the ref basically going to bring us back in the standing position. He kind of likes that as they get into a bit of a slugfest. First off of one side of the ring, then back to the other.
South doing a very good job of keeping it where he can throw punches. Norwood is used to being able to push people around, physically dominating with his athleticism.
And South got a little bit overextended right there, and then the upper body, the toss to the mat by Norwood. But very quickly, the referee brings him back to the center of the ring.
He just wants to make sure they don't get underneath those ropes and cause an issue. But you can see this is both of these fighters. Pressure from Norwood, trying to land blows. South landed pretty effectively from the bottom, threatening with submissions.
Matt, talk to me about the rules. Where do these rules come from?
Well, the rules are different than what you see in the civilian world. For example, in the preliminary rounds, it's kind of a cross between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rules and American folk-style wrestling. In the next round, the intermediate, it's a modification of pancrase rules, which is a obscure kind of fighting. It's actually one of the original Greek.
Yeah, back to the Greco-Roman days.
That's right. You know, in the ancient Olympics, the 3 combative events were boxing, wrestling, and the pancrathlon, which is basically what you see here. And the big difference is that they were only not allowed to bite or gouge, and the referee enforced those rules with a stick that he would hit the people with if they were breaking the rules. So we've come a little bit from there.
Yeah, times have changed a little bit. Fortunately, the referee doesn't get to use a stick anymore.
You know, sometimes when you're the referee, you wish you could use a stick.
Well, they're under 1 minute right now in the first round. Jason Norwood again on the top. Jacob South in the bottom position. But these rules that come together, you basically, the Army Combatives program, will take, modify, and then establish its set of rules that it's going to follow at each tier.
That's right, and it's a very sophisticated process, because you imagine if you make one type of blow illegal or one type of hold illegal, the fighters are trying to win, so they'll come up with another way to hurt them, and you have to anticipate what it is they would do and know enough about the game. And you can see in various styles of combat the effects that the rules have on what they do. What sets combatives competition apart is that the goal is not to win these fights. The goal of the program is to produce proficient fighters for the battlefield.
Under 10 seconds to go. Well, I can tell you this, the goal right now of Jason Norwood is to finish off Jacob South and win this fight. So the long-range goal might perhaps be to be more proficient on the battlefield, but right now in the minds of Jason Norwood and in the mind of Jacob South, their immediate goal is to win this competition. As they go back to their corners here at the end of round number 1, let's give a listen, see if we might be able to hear what Jason Norwood is being told.
His coach there is Chris Big Daddy Perkins. Used to run the Fort Sill program, but now runs the Fort Hood program. So it's interesting to see him coaching the fighter from Fort Sill.
So what do you think Big Daddy Perkins has to say right now to his combatant, Jason Norwood?
I think if I was him, I'd be telling him to open it up. Norwood's doing a good job of pressing, keeping in a dominant position, but he really needs to open the fight up so he can show his real abilities.
You had a good look then just now at Jason Norwood. You ever go to the corner and look at their eyes? Can you tell anything from their eyes?
Well, I've cornered Norwood and South both before in other competitions, and these two guys are pros. They're both in there executing what they know to be the right thing. You really don't have to coach a person like that too much. Oh, nice takedown.
Very nice takedown by Jason Norwood. They came out and traded blows, if you will, and then Norwood decides to move in and get the upper body takedown. But no, you don't really have to necessarily coach them a lot. A little tune here, a little tune there, and then focus them in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that Norwood's coach must have told him to make sure his takedown was past the legs. You could see him threatening that arm lock now.
Mm-hmm. You get that arm lock, you could basically put him away with that tough arm lock, could you not?
That's right. If he can get it in a place where it could be broken, South will be in trouble. He's fighting it. South knows the game. He knows exactly what he's trying to do and how to defend it.
Yeah, Jacob South knows that when he has that arm and manipulates that arm and puts it in some tough positions, a couple of things are going to happen. The referee could step in to prevent the injury, or the tap out.
That's really far behind his back, but to make the arm lock effective, he needs to move his hand away from his body, form more of an L shape out to the side. As long as he pushes it up behind him like that, it's not super effective in attacking that shoulder joint.
So we've talked about strength before. You've got to have, there he's got that arm just a little bit more back, but we've talked about strength, and Jacob South is doing a very good job in using his strength to prevent that from happening.
And he's also working the angle, so whenever Norwood starts to push that behind his back, South would rather have it behind his back. So he's sitting up, giving it room to go the direction where it's safe for him. Turning the angle to make sure he protects his own shoulder joint.
Yeah, Jacob South now. His hips are pretty well locked under him, too. I mean, it'd be nice if he could get his hips out, in this case, off to his left and maybe come around behind, but he's pretty much immobilized right now thanks to Jason Norwood.
What you see in action here, too, is that this is one of the benefits of combatives training, combatives competition. You know, South's in a bit of a bad spot, but he's keeping his head. He's calm. He's been here before. It's the same thing that happens to you in the war zone. Get in a bad spot, you need to keep your head. You need to think your way through the conflict.
You don't have to be in the war zone to be in a bad spot, but the outcome is still pretty much, or the process is the same. Keep your head about you, remain calm and cool in the situation, and then do the right thing to get out.
That's right, and that's you can look at the look on South's face as he's down there. That's what he's doing. He's thinking, he's trying to work the angles, he's keeping his head about him.
You know, we talk a lot about a warrior ethos. This is a big step, a good step, I should say, in developing the warrior ethos in our soldiers.
You know, we have a saying at the combative school that, you know, the defining characteristic of the warrior is the willingness to close with the enemy. And that's definitely true. That's what makes somebody a warrior. But how do you develop the sort of warrior that we need, the sort that is gonna be there? You know, there's the term squared away in the Army and the Marine Corps, and whatnot. What does squared away really mean? We ask all the students coming through. Looks like Norwood's getting to his feet.
Yeah, Norwood's on his feet now. He's just looking for the right angle of attack. Good move pretty much by Jacob South.
And the back trading. Nice knee.
Oh, and down he goes again. Jason Norwood, strong with the upper body push down that time.
Doesn't want to get stuck in the guard and quickly jumps around when he sees the chance.
So squared away, what does that mean?
Well, that's it. If we ask him, what does squared away mean? Does it mean the guy with the shiny boots or the pressed uniform who can answer all the questions on the test? Or does squared away mean that's the person I want with me when I get deployed? And that's what it should mean, and that's what you can see here. Is there any doubt we would want these people with us when we got deployed?
Well, one of the things I've heard these contestants say is, I'm here to finish the fight. I'm here to finish the fight. And you know, when you go down that trail, that's the kind of soldier you want to go down the trail with.
That's it.
Well, right now, Jason Norwood in the top position over Jacob Smith. Excuse me, I keep calling him Jacob Smith, but it's Jacob South.
Looks like Norwood's got the arm triangle here, trying to finish it.
My apologies, of course.
That looks like he's out. And not only is South in here, he's got a brother that's a combatives teacher for the Army as well over in Iraq right now. So it seems like a family business being a soldier and a combatives instructor for the Souths.
Approach the 15-second mark here in round number 2 of this cruiserweight gold medal match between Jason Norwood in the red, Jacob South in the blue on the bottom, I might add. As the final seconds tick away, there's the bell to end round number 2.
The South mounting a really strong defense, but it's just that. It's a defense against Norwood, who seems to be dominating positionally.
Norwood went back to his corner under a very full power, head of steam, if you will. Looks like he has a lot of stamina left. Jacob South, on the other hand.
South being quartered there by Nate Ford, his former instructor at the combative school in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Got to circle him up. He's just using the strikes to close the distance. That's all he's doing. They're striking. Don't sit in the pocket with him. He strikes, move out. Strike, move, no combinations.
You get the feeling that they know that he needs to strike and move out and not sit in the corner with his opponent if Jacob South expects to win this contest.
That's it. You heard him saying Norwood is using his strikes to close the distance and get the takedown. And they know he needs to keep his range in order to be effective with his striking. So that's solid advice from the corner. Oh, South starts off with a kick to the head.
And then he backs away, doesn't sit on him. But look at Norwood. He counters that coaching strategy, that coaching advice, by going into close combat in the corner.
You can see him, South fighting his way out.
And then he does very successfully what he did in the first 2 rounds. Jason Norwood takes Jacob South down to the canvas.
You know, that fighting in the corner is an important thing. In real life, they're walls and they're couches and curbs. You don't always go down because you want to. Sometimes it's just the way the terrain is.
You know, Matt, this is really a reflection of a culture, and we'll call it a cultural shift, if you will, in the Army. How difficult is it to change a culture?
Well, we take the long-term view. You know, the Army of the 90s and the 80s that I grew up in is vastly different from the Army now. Imagine the soldiers in today's Army, they've grown up in an Army at war, and they're used to the real realities of what the fight is about.
Well, you know, you indicate in sports, basically, we compete as we train, and in battle, we fight as we train. you know, you play as you practice, you fight as you train. So as much realism, the culture changes when we can liken the training environment to the actual environment that we're going to find on the battlefield.
That's true. And you know, in the combatives world, there's a debate always about whether sportive competition pulls you away from combative reality, and it undoubtedly does. You'll notice they're not biting each other's nose off, or nobody has a knife on their belt. And those are the realities of fighting. So although this is very close to a fight, it's not a real fight. And we have to, oh, there's some good hammer fist. We have to keep focused on the fight. Army units are not only required to have competition, but also scenario-based training for their unit mission. So we can take all this energy and all this skill and direct it towards what we need to accomplish.
From a theoretical framework, too, you've got rules of engagement, and here you have rules of Army combatives. And there you see the good hammer strikes to the head right now by Jacob South, who's fighting out of the bottom position.
South's trying to threaten an armbar, but it's not working. Yeah, you heard South in his pre-fight interview talking about adjusting to the various rules and the levels of competition. Well, that's exactly right. You have to have your head about you to make sure the techniques you're using are allowed, and that's the same mentality as fighting within the rules of engagement. And that's a good scramble.
Good scramble. Jason Norwood did a good job of getting around behind Jacob South and then taking him on down to the canvas.
South reaching in for that attempted bent armbar there. I don't think he's going to get it.
Round number 3, deep into round number 3. And if Jason Norwood continues to do what he's been doing through this round as he did through the first 2 rounds, you would tend to think that the nod easily could go to Norwood over South.
I think South is putting up a valiant defense. He's doing really good. He's obviously got the skills. It's just being dominated a little bit physically, and Norwood's superior takedown ability seems to be telling the tale.
I mean, you want to know who the aggressor is and who is taking the fight to their opponent versus who's on the receiving end.
That's also possible to win from the bottom. It's unlikely, but if you're the one giving the damage.
Valiant effort right there by Jacob South.
South trying to take down the wrestler. And settling on his back again. You know, that's the thing about fighting. You don't ever want to be on your back. But when you fight somebody who's beating you on the takedowns, or you fall down over the curb or get pushed over the couch, sometimes you are, and you have to have a good defense.
Sometimes, what you're saying is sometimes on the battlefield and sometimes in life, you will be on your back, period.
That's right. And you don't know how to fight from that position, you're in a hurt locker.
Under 40 seconds remaining, this the final determining round of this Cruiserweight gold medal bout. Jacob South back on the bottom position from Fort Douglas, Utah, and Salt Lake City, and Jason Norwood again on the top.
Norwood working that arm lock on the far side there. Yeah, it's a good view of it.
You see the blood right there on the arm of Jacob South. That looks like it might have come from the mouth. Under 10 seconds to go from the mouth of Jason Norwood. But Norwood, a good lock on the arm. That's probably the way this is going to finish.
Let's see South defending that. And I think it's over.
It's over. Norwood knew where he was on the clock. And as he let up, South goes ahead and makes the turn, but it comes at the end of round number 3.
Pretty solid submission attempt there at the end. A little bit late, though. I think it's pretty clear that Norwood won all 3 rounds. At least that's what I would have said if I was a judge. Although South, a former champion, you could see he had his mind in it to the very end. Was there fighting away.
And that's a good observation, Matt. I think Jacob South stayed in that bout mentally. He stayed in that bout physically. He found himself on the bottom a lot.
The winner of the Cruiserweight, in the red corner from Fort Sill, Jason Norwood, by unanimous decision.
So Jason Norwood has his hands raised as the winner of the gold medal bout in the Cruiserweight division. For Matt Larson and the entire broadcast crew, I'm Van Stokes. We'll see you next time on Close Combat.
Here we go.